The next paper will be presented by Yusra on the topic Proposal for the Component-Based Integration Infrastructure in the Context of Moodle Environment as an E-Learning Open Source.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Today I will present to you about my research paper. Actually, this paper is come from my master thesis under the supervision of Dr. Zuhoor Al-Khanjari. This paper talk about how to integrate software using component-based integration. Actually, this integration is designed and architectured through this paper. I will go through a learning management system and e-learning as an open source. I will talk about Moodle as an open source e-learning application. Then I will go to a research problem, system requirement that I use to implement this idea. And then I will talk about the component-based integration approach. Okay. As here in the conference, I'll talk about the open source and how to use that open source in e-learning and what is the learning management system. Actually, here I will focus on computer science education from two parts, which is a practical part and a theoretical part. Here, what is the problem? We will discuss the problem of integrating software tool for practical session of computer science education. What I mean by that, computer science education students, focus on students, want to implement or practice the theoretical content through the practical session. Why not we use that practical session through the e-learning or as an open source Moodle? We implement that practical session in the learning management system. Okay, here the proposed solution is component-based integration approach. What is this approach? I will discuss through next slides. Here generally talk about learning management system, which is support the theoretical content, but actually it's not support the practical, or it is limited in supporting the practical content. Also, there is some specialization need a practical session in the learning management system. For example, computer science, engineers, mathematics, or a science area. Okay, here are some advantage of using open source learning management system, which is customization, easy for testing a new component that we're adding, customization according to the organization styles, and also help in integration, and here what we will discuss in this paper. General information about Moodle. As you know, it is open source and using PHP programming language and three-tier client-server architecture. Here some advantage of Moodle. This advantage will reflect our research. For example, allow modification and allow customization, compatible with many languages, excellent documentation and support, and this is what we need. It is run in any system, supports PHP using a single database to store the data, available in most of learning institutes, and support unlimited users. Some disadvantage, which is there is some problem maybe in installation, if it is the teacher is non-IT teacher. Also, maybe the Moodle is not support the complete learning process, as here we will discuss. Okay, what is the research problem? The research problem is to study the limitation in the learning management system in general and Moodle as an open source specifically. And this study of the limitation regarding the practical session in computer science education, and maybe later on implemented in other area, in other theoretical area. Using system requirements, Moodle version 2.6, Windows Server, there's some requirements for implementation. And here, main tools that we use to implement the idea of component-based, which is a virtual programming language tool for easy use by the student to compile the programming language. Okay, here the general architecture of this approach. What is the component of this approach? This approach is uses a component-based approach. That means we will use the tool of the same languages to build it inside the Moodle or inside the learning management system. For example, if the Moodle is built using PHP, so that tool, compiler, for example, we will use it to build it using the same programming language and styles of Moodle or of any language system. Okay. Here we will go through the development process. First, we prepare and develop the tool using Moodle, PHP, programming languages, then adding a new activities as a module. And as we know, the module contains module and blocks, but here we need to communicate with the core system. For example, there is software tools need to communicate with the core system for a feedback or to run a feedback, for example, a grade or some assignments wants to come back with the grades of students. After that, link that tool to a specific course Moodle, then the student can easily open it. Here, the general overview that's discussed what is previously I discussed. First, the student will access the course, and here the course is the architecture design, for example, or software engineering. Then the student will choose one tool of that set, for example, a compiler, UML draw, simulation, Office suite, and all this tool is built using the open source learning management system with the same programming languages inside the Moodle. Okay, and then this tool will communicate with Moodle API core to easy communicate with the Moodle component. And as we know that Moodle is different components. Okay, here the example of the compiler. Student can run a compiler inside the Moodle environment, test the coding, also run the assignments. Okay, from this study, we found that there is advantage and disadvantage of this approach, as we discussed. The advantage is facilitating accessing of software tools anytime and from any place. That means if I use Moodle to get a lecture there, I can use it also to practice my theoretical concepts. Also provide the needed tools for all students from different disciplines. Users' data can be shared. But however, the disadvantage in this approach is need a specialized developer. That means not every teacher developing that software tools. It needs a developer, programmer. Increase the load on the llamas because will be run in the same environment of Moodles. So this will be a bottleneck, maybe problems for many users' access. Teacher may not be able to develop the needed tools, consume the resource of Moodle. So the conclusion from this research, the e-learning platform could be extended because it is open source, and this will support the computer science education as a practical session we will discuss. This research depends on Moodle as an open source, and also it is used in Sultan Qaboos University. As in a future work, we will study that if extending that approach to cover other education area using the same integration approach. Also, we think about using another integration approach Also discuss that surface-oriented architecture or other architecture that solve the problems come from this approach. Security issues also to protect the user's work. Also, the user's work could be protected using that study. Thank you for listening to me. Any question, can you contact me on the email on the proceeding paper.